President of the United States off the airplane in a food truck. Everybody else stays on the plane. The president flies in an unmarked plane, and his senior staff and a few hundred journalists fly as a decoy. Does any of this surprise you?
It surprises me in the sense that the extent of Israeli influence over the United States is extraordinary. It's as if the United States does not have its own intelligence agencies. It's as if the United States does not have anyone to assess the situation in the region. Depending on the Israeli regime for this sort of information, and then not having, I mean, first of all, if Turkey is so dangerous, then why did he fly there in the first place? Why did they allow him to travel there? And of course it isn't. I've been to Turkey many times. Very safe place. The government's in charge. There's no doubt that such a plot would not be possible, especially at a time when NATO leaders are there. Trump is there. You would have an amount of security in Turkey that would be probably unprecedented.
Chris, but in any case, just let me interrupt here for a minute. Do you have the full screen about CIA low confidence? I think that's a quote from the Washington Post. The CIA told the Secret Service they had low confidence in what Mossad told the CIA. Stated differently, they didn't believe it.
Exactly. So why would he prioritize, or why would the White House prioritize the Israeli regime after all it's done to the United States, after this war, after the Iraq war, after all the misery that they've imposed upon the American people with their endless wars? Why would they still go and choose to obey the Israelis rather than their own intelligence agency? And then the way in which they separated him from the journalists and others, it's cowardly. And it's not just, and regardless of Trump being a coward, but all those people who pushed him to do it, it's as if they want to destroy his reputation. All the memes that we've been seeing over the last 24, 48 hours are humiliating for him. So the people around him, do they really want him to, do they want to destroy his reputation? Because it looks like that from here. But in any case, I think it's quite clear that the Iranians are not going to invest in assassinations or anything like that. The Americans know that. The Iranians, of course, believe that Trump should be put on trial, and so should all those people who pressed the button to kill all those children in Minab and those teenage girls playing volleyball in another city, and in hospitals and schools and the apartment blocks and the factories and the pharmaceutical factories that were bombed. These people should all be put on trial, and they should face capital punishment. But Iran is not going to send anyone to Turkey.
Does Iran have unlike the United States, well, actually, the United States does have a policy against assassination. Trump obviously violated. The Israelis have no policy against assassination. It's an ordinary governmental tool for them. What is the policy of the Iranian government on assassinating a foreign head of state?
I don't think anyone has even discussed it until now. I don't think it's ever been discussed in the corridors of power. It's the Israeli regime and the United States that live outside international law. The United States sees itself as above international law. It's an exceptionalist state. Then the Israelis, of course, see themselves as a chosen people and thus above everyone else. So for them, it's all okay. And then when they do carry out assassinations, it's never condemned. It's never when General Soleimani was murdered by Trump, and Netanyahu pushed him into doing that too, and he pulled out at the last second. But when he assassinated him, no one in the United States was outraged, or very few people. Or when he launched the war against Iran and assassinated Ayatollah Khamenei, it wasn't a big thing in the United States. There was no outrage about this. Everyone was confirming that Iran is evil and the leaders are evil and the guards are evil and everyone is evil, but maybe that he should have done it or maybe he should not have done it. That was the debate. And then what Western media does, Judge, is that during the war, they would bomb apartment blocks and kill like 30 people, 40 people every time. And then the New York Times or the Washington Post or other media outlets would call these precision strikes, taking out Iranian leaders or generals, but not pointing out that this is the exact same policy that they would use in Gaza or in Lebanon. In Gaza, they would monitor the families of people, and then when the target would enter the house and the children would welcome him, then they fire missiles and kill them all and their neighbors. This is the exact same thing that they were doing in Iran as well, but no condemnation. Sometimes I was on a debate last night on Al Mayadeen television, an Arabic news channel, and an American was outraged that Iran is violating international law and it's trying to control the Strait of Hormuz and it wants to take fees. And I was just, the whole time I was saying, you do know that the United States has waged a war against the country. It's killed the leader. It's killed thousands of people. And you're talking about, you're outraged because he was an American academic. You're outraged because Iran is, from your perspective, violating international law while the country is under siege. It's, this is just how the mentality of these elites work.
Wow. What is the, I have to ask you this every time. Here we are in the middle of August. What is the status of the Strait of Hormuz as we speak, Mohammed?
Not much is going through, and especially during the last 2-3 days, I think it's even been more so. What Trump is saying and what his officials in the U.S. government have been saying are nonsense. And the evidence is that I've been told, first of all, the United States is at least on the ground preparing for an attack on Iran. The U.S. has moved its assets into position and has brought in more equipment and planes to carry out a large offensive. And the United States has threatened Iran with an attack through third countries. So if the Strait of Hormuz is open and everything is as the United States wants, then why is the United States threatening Iran with war? Now, the Iranians believe that if the United States carries out an attack, it could be a war on the nation, meaning to target infrastructure and in order to bring about societal collapse. That is what Trump has been threatening all along. And of course, to no condemnation from European parliaments or European MPs or diplomats or governments or Canadian protests or Australian or New Zealand, no one seems to be at all upset about this. But if he does move towards an assault to bring about societal collapse, Iran has said that it will go and destroy everything, especially in particular in those countries that have assisted the United States, meaning the countries in the Persian Gulf, the Israeli regime, and probably Jordan, I don't know, but Iran will take out all of their critical infrastructure too, and that would bring about societal collapse on the Arabian Peninsula. They have no water, everyone will have to leave probably towards Europe or wherever, and then we will have a global economic meltdown, because when there's no more society, there's no more oil and gas, and that means that no one can manipulate the markets anymore. It'll just be catastrophic.
He's certainly been manipulating the markets. Here's one of his manipulations. This is from 4 days ago, but you'll get a kick out of this even if you've already heard it. Chris, number 3.
Back to the subject of Iran, sir. Can you give us any estimate of when you think the Strait of Hormuz will be part of it?
It's open now. We're taking a lot of shit. It's open now. Look, the only one that has control of the Strait of Hormuz right now is the United States Navy. We have a blockade that's been infallible. It's a steel wall. And we let people in that we want to let in, and those people come in, and they've been coming in and they're going out. So it's actually open now. We do not let them go into Iran. They're not admitted into the Strait to go to Iran. But it's open for others. We control the Strait 100%.
Is there any truth in that?
Well, they are blockading the Iranian ports and the Strait of Hormuz too, but that's from hundreds of kilometers away, and the Iranian ships do get through, and so do ships that Iran allows to pass through the Strait. Iran hasn't completely shut down the Strait, but no, he has no control over the Strait of Hormuz. If he did, then he wouldn't have to say it every day. I mean, when someone every day says everything is fine, that obviously something is not fine at all.
Chris, can you put that full screen up that you just had there? This is from the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, which I believe is a joint, correct me, Mohammed, venture of Iran and Oman. The statement, which is August 12, 2 days ago, today's Friday, this is Wednesday, claims and repeated posts by U.S. officials that the Strait of Hormuz is no longer blocked do not change the reality. The Strait of Hormuz remains blocked and will not be reopened until Iran's conditions are accepted. Now, Mohammed, those conditions theoretically, well, not theoretically, legally, sat in the Palace of Versailles when he signed the Memorandum of Understanding. Those are the conditions in the Memorandum of Understanding. Am I right?
Yes, you're 100% correct. The MOU, the Iranians are saying, implement the MOU in full. Don't try to deceive us. But first of all, I should point out that is, at the moment, it's not an Iranian-Omani operation. It's Iran that's carrying out.
Okay.
The Oman has not entered it yet, but they've come to an agreement. They haven't announced it yet, but the agreement is there. But they're waiting for circumstances to change because right now there's siege warfare going on, and there's no reason to make any announcement. But the strait is a part for it to open. The United States has to carry out its side of the bargain, and the Supreme National Security Council, and the new chair of the Supreme National Security Council, has stated basically that the MOU must be implemented, and they've given some extra explanations about what they mean. So in Article 1 of the MOU, the Iranians said the war in Lebanon must come to an end, and the Zionist occupation must be ended. And then they said the rest of the fronts must also, the situation must be normalized. Now Iran has named those fronts. It said Palestine, Yemen, and Iraq. So basically what the Iranians are saying is that we are going to have this MOU implemented in full in the way in which we interpret it, or there's never going to be any normalization in the Strait of Hormuz.
Isn't there a trigger in the MOU for 60 days? Because the 60th day, I believe, is in the next day or so. It may even be this weekend. And isn't that a 60-day trigger the permission of the signatory parties that Iran can start charging a fee?
Yes, definitely. Yes, after 60 days. Well, it isn't said specifically, but in Article 5, it implies that, because it says that Iran and Oman will discuss how to manage the strait in future. But Iran said that after 60 days they're going to take fees. Now, whether Iran does that at this stage or not, I don't know, because for the most part it is closed. It's not completely closed. The Iranians do let a handful of ships go out that belong to countries friendly to Iran, but not Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and others which are hosting U.S. forces, which, as I said, U.S. forces are prepared for an assault. Now, whether they carry out that assault or not, we don't know. But in any case, Iran is not going to be looking upon favorably at their trade and business. But yes, hypothetically speaking, the Iranians could start receiving fees in the coming days.
So, talk to me about the new military advisors either appointed by the new Ayatollah or the Council of Experts or some security council. I'm not sure who does the appointing, but the Western press is reporting, and tell me if this is correct or not, that the new folks are more serious military and more ideologically devoted to the sovereignty of Iran than their predecessors.
I don't think any of the commanders are different from previous commanders, and most of these people were in power. Their names were just not declared. The fact that their names were declared shows that Iran is much more confident now about protecting its leaders than before. After their predecessors were martyred and assassinated, these new people were appointed, but their names weren't put out in public so that the U.S. or Netanyahu wouldn't be able to easily search for them. Now, this shows a greater confidence today than what existed before. The fact that Ayatollah Khamenei, the new leader, Ayatollah Seyed Mujtaba Khamenei, met President Pezeshkian for 7 or 8 hours, a 7 or 8 hour meeting, again shows that things are normalizing and that the dangers that existed in the previous months are no longer as great today as they were before. But what has changed is the chair of the Supreme National Security Council. And he, I think, is going to be significantly more assertive than the previous chair.
Is that General Razai?
Yes, that's General Mohsen Rezai, Major General Mohsen Rezai. He was the commander of the guards throughout the war where Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, and he led the guards for I think 16 years. And he's had senior positions in government during these years. He was also he has a PhD in economics, I think, and he was the economic deputy of former President Raisi. So, but also, not only is he more assertive as his speeches and his interviews and his written statements clearly show than the previous chair, but he's also a much more powerful figure. He's a known entity. He was basically during the war maybe the third or fourth most important person in the country because he was leading the war effort alongside the regular army. So he has a lot of authority. His words carry more weight than the previous chair. And as I said, he's more assertive. So I think that sends a very strong message to the Americans, to Netanyahu, and to those countries in the region that are assisting the United States.
Here's Foreign Minister Arachi earlier this week. Chris, cut number 7.
And well, our brave armed forces, who truly sacrificed everything they had, managed to render the world's largest and most formidable army completely helpless and ultimately defeated it. And please understand, this is not just some empty slogan at all. It is a profound reality that the entire world is now openly admitting to and acknowledging with great respect. That in the recent war, it was the Islamic Republic of Iran that proved itself to the world. And it clearly showed us that it is truly a remarkably tough, resilient, and completely invincible power. I have heard this many times from foreign ministers of other countries, from officials of other countries, that you Iranians have created a wonder, the exact same phrase. You have astonished the whole world.
I think that view is accepted universally everywhere except in the White House and in Tel Aviv. Who knows? They may even accept it there, but they can't admit it.
I think that the White House knew in Turkey there was no threat against Trump, but they allowed him to be humiliated. I just can't see it being any other way. And I think they definitely knew. I don't think they're that naive. But again, the influence of the Zionist lobby, the Israeli regime, is still very enormous. And I think that the Zionists in general are becoming increasingly irrational and foolish. And they are their own worst enemies because they are pushing the United States and the Israeli regime in a direction which is not only creating revulsion across the world, but we're seeing it happen in the United States itself. So there's no doubt that across the world, people were utterly stunned that Iran defeated the combined forces of the United States, the Israeli regime, and the countries in the region which assisted in this war, not only by providing military bases, but countries in the Persian Gulf region, like Saudi Arabia, like the Emirates, like Qatar, and probably Kuwait. But these three I know for sure, that and probably the others too. They funded the war. The United States doesn't rent these bases, and it doesn't even pay for its expenses in these bases. The host countries pay for the expenses, and during war, the expenses went through the roof. I know for a fact that Qatar was having problems funding the U.S. War effort and its activities in Qatar during the 40-day war. So, this was my friends and colleagues and across the world who've been in communication with me. They all, even friends of Iran, they all thought Iran was going to fall. And then after a couple of weeks, they're just hoping Iran would survive. But now across the world, some people have this expectation that the Iranians will take over, bring down the empire by itself. But in any case, yes, I think that Iran's status has changed enormously. And people, Judge, are seeing through the propaganda. I have so many people contacting me from the United States, people I've never met before. And their views on Iran are, they see right through the propaganda. And I'm very impressed. And it's of course because of alternative media, but also I think your own show, other books that I've been introducing to people, like Going to Tehran and Alistair Crook's book. But also I think the sheer foolishness and criminal behavior of the Israeli regime and their lobby in the United States, this has contributed a great deal to undermine all the narratives that they've been building for the last 47, 48 years.
Our mutual friend, Ray McGovern, who has retired from the show, but from whom we happily hear from time to time, still warns of a false flag, meaning the Israelis would attack an American person or facility and make it look as if it were the Iranians. Do you know if we've come close to that?
Well, you have people who would know better. But, Judge, after 9/11, I was one of those people I would just try to stay away from anyone who would say that 9/11 was more than just these Al-Qaeda operatives. And for years, and I think I probably didn't treat some people properly because of that. But then I watched Tucker Carlson's documentary, and I think it's clear that there were Israelis involved in this. And so why I think it could happen again. Although I'm not sure it would have the impact anymore, because people's views have shifted so much that if there is a false flag operation, I think a lot of people, the first thing that they would say is that this is a false flag operation. So I'm not sure if it would have the sort of impact, anywhere near this impact on that what we saw on 9/11.
Wow. So the day after she flew in the decoy Air Force One, the Carolyn Leavitt, the press secretary, quit. Coincidence, timing, who knows?
Well, Judge, if you were the president of the United States and they told you that there is there's going to be an assassination plot against you, and we're going to take you off this plane, and then we're going to take you somewhere else, and then this plane with all these people are going to take off without you, would you accept that?
No other president has. When this happened to George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, they provided information as they understood it and a secure off-ramp for everybody else on the plane.
You know, when we were on our way back from Islamabad during the negotiations,
Right.
The Washington Post, when we were there, put out an opinion piece that the negotiators should be assassinated. And there was a strong belief that our plane would possibly be shot down on the way back. First of all of us got on the plane. They changed the plane, but it was still clear that we're all on the plane. I don't want to go into the details, but the plane landed in the nearest airport inside Iran, and we all took the train or cars to Tehran. Everyone came. The Speaker of Parliament was on the flight. He actually came to the back of the plane to shake hands with everyone. We had a lot of journalists, young female journalists were among us. We all flew back together. But let's say that the Speaker of Parliament or the President of Iran or the President of the United States, he was told that this plane was in danger. Okay, get off the plane. But do you let everyone else fly? Of course not. You say, no, this plane shouldn't fly. We'll find a different way for people to get back home. But you don't use people, especially people who cover you, as decoys, threaten the lives of a couple of hundred people. It's the same people who, when Trump was allegedly assassinated, I don't even know if that's true anymore. But and then he said, fight, fight, fight. I saw a meme today where he was in, one of those places where they put the food on planes on the inside, saying, fight, fight, fight. I mean, he's demolished whatever's left of his credibility.
Yeah, there he is with, this is obviously a meme, President Erdogan of Turkey, and Trump's inside the food truck. What's in the box? Oh, well, Mohammed, thank you. A very, very fascinating, as always, conversation. Deeply appreciated. Have a great weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
You too, Judge. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you at some point.
Thank you. All the best.